I've been practicing law for 30 years. So if you're a senior, I need to make sure you have the policy available if you think you're going to need it. And what these policies do is they just pay for whether it's home health care, nursing home care, assisted living facility care, adult community care. They pay the coverage and the policy lasts. In Florida and a lot of states, one thing to know is that if the reason the policyholder did not pay their coverage so the policy allegedly lapsed was because of dementia, you have 18 months to actually get that back on.
Hello, friend. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Carline Cadet Francois. I go above and beyond to serve you, to educate you, and help you succeed in senior care. Today, we are excited to talk about long-term care insurance claim, the process. I know some of you have reached out to me. I've met some of you in different places within the community about denies, claims. How do you go about navigating the realm of long-term care? Attorney Mindy is going to go into that. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Attorney Mindy Chmielarz is a founding partner at Disability Insurance Law Group with over 25 years of experience in insurance law. She now focuses exclusively on representing individuals in claims for disability, long-term care insurance, life insurance benefits. Mindy has been instrumental in driving policy reforms, including advocating for the ERISA amendments in Congress and working with the Department of Labor to strengthen in protections for claimants. She is now nationally recognized speaker and author on disability and long-term insurance claim. Mindy, I am so excited to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So I'm Mindy Chmielarz. I've been practicing law a long time, over 30 years, and into this area of the law about 20 years ago. When I originally started, I was working for an insurance defense firm and found that my sympathy more with our plaintiffs and the people that we were supposed to be trying to not help. So I switched over to plaintiff's work and kind of fell into disability insurance. It was a relatively new area. And from that, those types of claims are similar to these long-term care claims, which I know we're going to get into. I was with a smaller firm. My current partner was the Carline who next week broke off and really started exclusively focusing on disability and long-term care. And over the last 10 years, it's really been booming because these policies that they sold, back in the 90s, early 2000s, all of a sudden everybody now is trying to get these insurance benefits, and insurance companies, I don't know why they seem so surprised, but they are pretty reluctant to pay and they're trying not to pay. And I think that they're using the fact that a lot of these people are elderly or family are not around to avoid paying. So we fight for them and get the insurance companies to pay the benefits they promised to pay and that these people paid for.
That is amazing. That is so amazing. So would you say majority of my audience are people in senior care, whether they are the senior themselves or they are someone who take care of the senior, or they are an entrepreneur who have a business where they take care of seniors? When it comes to all these three different type of people, how do you represent, let's say, for example, someone who come across as a senior listening to this right now? What advice would you give to them? What are some of the first few things that they should do before we even tap into their families or the people that take care of them?
So if you're a senior and you have a long-term care policy, the one thing you want to do is make sure you have the policy available if you think you're going to need it. And what these policies do is they just pay for whether it's home health care, nursing home care, assisted living facility care, adult community. They pay a benefit that goes towards that care. So if you have a policy, you want to pull it out so you understand how the benefits are paid, and then you want to make sure that the benefit amount listed on that policy is up to date, because a lot of these have built-in cost of living increases. So maybe when you took it out in the 90s or the early 2000s, the benefit was 120 a day. These automatic COLA increases, it might be up to 150, 180 a day. And then that way, when you're ready to use it, or you want to, have a family member help you, or use it, or contact a facility to help you use it, you have an understanding of what the policy terms are and you have the policy available to go through.
Now, for family members, let's say, for example, mom have this policy, but she now develops dementia. how do they go about making sure, and now the policy needs to be activated for taking care of her. How do they go about navigating these realms of helping mom out?
So there's two things with that. One is some people, or an adult caretaker or child, all of a sudden looks through mom's stuff and they're like, "Oh wow, mom had a long-term care policy and she didn't pay the coverage and the policy lapsed. And oh no, what do we do?" Well, in Florida and a lot of states, one thing to know is that if the reason the policyholder did not pay their coverage, so the policy allegedly lapsed, was because of dementia, you have 18 months to actually get that back on. So just a good thing to know, because that's a lot of times what happens, right? As you go to take care of your parent, you start dealing with their finances and you're like, "Oh my God, there's 4 missed premium payments. Here's a letter that said the policy lapsed and we're in trouble." And you may not be, because if it's due to dementia, then you, and Florida, at least in other states are different, but you have 18 months to get that back on track. When you do find the policy and figure out that the policy is in effect, you obviously want to pull the policy, and the best thing to do is to go through the terms, understand so there's called an elimination period. You want to understand how long until benefits kick in. So for example, if you are going to get home health care for your mom, and you say, "Oh, this policy covers $150 a day in home health care," there is what's called an elimination period. How many days do you have to have covered care before the policy kicks in? Some 0, some 30. There are attorneys out there like we are that can help you understand them. I can tell you, like us, we do a free consultation because the policies are confusing. Or if you're still in touch with your insurance agent, obviously.
Wow. I know I have a lot of people in the sandwich generation where they're taking care of their elderly parents, but then they still have little small children and they're running everything at once. And you're like, "Do what I need to do." And you go and you finally find that mom had long-term care insurance, which is amazing, by the way, because if she didn't have long-term care insurance, you'd have a lot of other issues. I mean, you could watch other episodes where we talk about these things. But now that you find she has long-term care insurance, you have a million things going on. You found a big thick book of paperwork. You don't know what this means, what these words mean. What should they do in that situation?
So one of the things to primarily understand is these policies pay benefits in 2 situations, but you have to be chronically ill. And so that means you have to establish with your parents, your mom's doctor or caregiver, that she, one, either needs help with 2 activities of daily living. And by help, they call it substantial assistance. And that is not necessarily hands-on help. It could be standby. So you have to show that there's eating, transferring, toileting, that continence, with that, at least 2 of those. Mom can't safely get in and out of the shower. Maybe someone just has to be there, hands on, establish that. And then maybe dressing, right? Like, dressing doesn't mean that mom has to run around in a muumuu with no undergarments and slippers. Like, if they need, because she's unsteady, then you want to clearly establish that with a doctor. So maybe that is talking to mom's doctor and saying, "Can you put in, make sure that the medical records reflect that she's steady and balanced and definitely needs some type of assistance or care with at least 2 of those ADLs." The other one you mentioned is dementia. And so that is, you want to show that there is a sufficient cognitive impairment that without some type of cueing or somebody being around, that mom would be, she's at significant risk to her health and safety. So, going on to walk out the door and not come back, or she's going to take her medications and take 22 pills or forget to take them. So you want to look at whichever way it is, establish with the physician or treatment provider, whoever that is, that mom needs either some type of substantial supervision cognitively or substantial assistance, with hands-on or standby.
I love that. Long-term care insurance will also cover, for example, if you have perhaps your 2 siblings and one sister is able to quit her job to care for mom. Is it true that long-term care insurance will pay to a certain amount based on what the terms are for that one sibling to be at least be able to take care of mom under those terms?
Under some policies, yes, and under some policies, no. So there are policies that require the home health care aid to be from an agency. And there's other policies that say whoever it is, we will pay up to $150, $180, $200, depending on what your policy is, a day So it's really very policy specific. And I'm going to say these policies, they can be confusing. The insurance companies are not always so forthright. So if you're really thinking of putting a policy into play, I would say either, if you have an insurance agent that you're comfortable with, talk to them. Otherwise, reach out to an attorney that understands how these policies work. Because you do want to go in, obviously, like any type of insurance, playing with your ducks all in a row. So you want to know if you're planning on having one of those siblings take care of mom, that's going to be covered. Otherwise, you might get home health care and work with the agency.
That's amazing to know, because I've also heard that within my community. People are asking me, is it true? And I'm like, well, I'm not a lawyer. I can connect you with somebody, So it sounds like it would probably be best for them to do both of the same, reaching out to their insurance provider and then having a lawyer review that particular insurance quote or policy to make sure that the goals of the families are being met. And if so, you would advise them on what to do. How should they go about that?
Yeah, I would say, if someone contacts us, we'll go through the policy, because there's some policies where you can have a family member or an independent person not affiliated with an agency take care of mom or dad, but they can't live in a house. So you really need, and every policy is different, the contract, they all have different terms. And honestly, I think they kind of wised up over the years. They're like, oh, this seems a little lenient. We don't want to pay for that. So, the older policies tend to be a little better than the newer policies. But yeah, I would, when anyone's welcome, I'm always happy to go through, read these policies quickly and understand what they are. We know what we're looking for. And you definitely want to know, because if you need an agency, then obviously you want to make sure it's a proper agency. If you don't, then that's great. And then again, I know there's many of them cover not just nursing homes, but assisted living facilities. So if you're planning on using it towards an assisted living facility, then you just want to understand what the coverage is and make sure that ALF will qualify.
Absolutely. And they end up using, usually the way that I've seen it is they start with a family member, that if that doesn't work, they'll go to a staffing agency. Then if that doesn't work, that only works for a certain amount of time. And then it transitioned into an ALF. And that's usually what their path is. So we talked about the senior person themselves. We talked about their family members. There are other entities like staffing agencies that comes in to provide services. If they come across a client, because even they themselves have to have certain requirements to be able to receive those payments, what are some things that they should be aware of to help the client help themselves and to help them receive the payment so they can provide that quality care for that parent? What are some things they should be aware of?
So they should know basically what is required under the policy to make sure that their client is eligible for the benefits. And like I said, a lot of times it's just showing that this person that the insured needs assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living. So, many agencies or ALFs will do their own assessment, and you want that assessment. You don't want to gloss over it. You want to be pretty detailed and say, why they're unsteady, why they're weak, why they're potentially a fall risk, or if it's a cognitive issue, they might burn themselves if they're in the kitchen by themselves, or why they might walk out the door and not know where they're going, problems with their medication. So during that assessment and figuring out the needs, you kind of work what they call a plan of care. And the agency wants to make sure that they do that. Once you have somebody who says, okay, I'm ready to make a claim, there's also a nurse assessment by the insurance company. So I like to have either the staff member, the caretaker, a family member available for that assessment, because our independent nurses hired by the insurance company, they're not always out there to get benefits. So you just want to make sure that it's clearly established that this person needs help with ADLs. And unfortunately with the elderly people, they're used to being independent, they're professionals, they've run their life fantastically, and then all of a sudden, it's hard to turn around and say, an assessor is going to say in nurse assessment for either the facility, the staffing agency, the insurance company, say, can you get dressed? And it's her quest to say no. So, to say, no, I need help. So you always want someone there to say, okay, mom, or okay, Mrs. Smith, you can, but, if I'm not here, you might fall, you're unsteady, I help you hook your bra. You can't run around in slippers because even if you put those on by your.
But this is what, to your point of what you said earlier about that they have to prove the elderly person is in need of at least 2 ADLs. These are basic symptoms of proving that, look, she can't stand up by herself. Her balance is off. She can't get out of the shower by herself. She can't put her shoes on. These are basic necessities that, unfortunately, when our seniors need help, unfortunately, down the road, they will need more help. So being able to see the signs and symptoms of what those activities of daily living are, the lack of being able to help themselves with those at least 2 activities of daily livings, what that looks like. So I love the fact that you're explaining some of the examples of what that really looks like, right? So then they'll know, okay, well, if mom can't balance herself to put her shoes on, perhaps we should start looking for help, right? If she can't get out of the shower by herself, if she can't bathe herself, if she can't really feed herself, if she's confused, she don't know when to take her meds. These are all symptoms of those activities of daily living. And that's how they begin to know, oh, I need help, or maybe I should activate this.
Doesn't have to be an invalid. Maybe you can get around with a walker, but it's just not safe when you're transferring from the chair to the walker. So it doesn't mean that mom can't do it. It means that she's unsteady and she's a fall risk. So we want someone there, or when she gets out of bed in the morning or in the middle of the night, maybe she can, but it's unsafe. And so, it needs to be clear. And the insurance companies try to make it appear that, if mom is on an all out invalid, these benefits are not payable, but that's not true. Maybe mom can do some of her dressing by herself, but again, sitting on a bed and trying to put something over your head, I mean, people teeter over, you get dizzy, or you're weak, or you can't lift your arms up properly. So, it's important to understand that these benefits are payable not at the point where you cannot, but where you just require either some standby assistance for safety or a little bit of hands-on. And you don't want to wait. These policies are great. If someone's strong enough to take these out, you want to utilize them for as long as you can.
And I have come up families that also wonder what happens with the terms of insurance. What happens when mom's insurance run out? We find that a lot of our seniors are living a lot longer than they anticipate. What happens when mom's long-term care insurance run out and they have anxieties around that? What advice do you have for them? And then even beyond that, for themselves, and some of them are thinking about getting long-term care insurance, some things that they should put in place to make sure that if they happen to live long, that they're protected.
So there's 2 things. Some of these policies, especially the older ones, have maybe 5 years lifetime. And what the insurance companies are doing is they don't want the liability. They're sending them these notices that say, hey, we know we're supposed to pay you for 5 years, 10 years life.
Saying that, so you were asking me, how do you kind of secure these benefits for as long as possible? Because potentially they could run out. So some people have lifetime policies, which is great. Some people have 3, 5, 10 years. What I was saying is, what happens now is if you have a long policy, the insurance companies, and I'm saying this happened to my mother-in-law, they will contact the insured and they will say, hey, we know you have lifetime benefits or 10 years, but you know what, we'll cut your premium in half if you agree to just allow benefits to be paid for 3 years. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. So just always, I say that if you have a daughter, son, caretaker, you can make sure that the insurance company sends all correspondence to you as well. And that is always helpful, because I know with my mother-in-law, we didn't know it was coming and going, and she made that choice. And I could tell you firsthand what happens is she ran out, and we're now to get Medicare assisted nursing home care, and it's a pain in the neck, and qualifying for all of that is difficult. So the other thing is, if let's say you have a policy that only covers 3 years of benefits, it doesn't necessarily mean 3 years, like 3 calendar years. You might not need, if you're having a home health, or somebody's staffing, you might not need the care every day. So you might want to break that down to 3 or 4 days a week, and that will extend it out. And when you do run out of care, you're dealing with either Medicare or Medicaid, And I know you've spoken about that. And I know with my mother-in-law, we had to bring in an outside person to help us figure out what we were doing at that point.
Yeah, it's definitely a big concern thinking about running out, but it's comforting to know that you can extend that time frame based on, you don't need 4 days a week. Maybe you just need 2 or 3 days a week, and you could work with other people that can provide you some respite care and you could prolong it. But for people who are just now getting insurance, we look about around the same age. What if we are now getting insurance? What should we work on? What are the worst and best case scenarios for us?
So I will say the policies that are available, they're just starting to, so one thing you want to look at is obviously I talked about an elimination period, like how many days do you have to go paying for your own qualified care before your policy kicks in? Obviously, the longer you go, the cheaper the policy is. So that's one thing. So maybe you want to make sure if you're going to say, okay, well, having a 90-day elimination period is really going to make this an affordable plan, that you have enough money put away to have 90 days of qualified care. And 90 days could mean, under some policies, if you just get somebody once or twice a week, that counts as 7 days. So you want to see how you can meet the elimination period. If you're doing ALF care, you're having somebody eventually move in, so you're going to go through it faster because that 3 years will go quickly. Maybe that 90 days, you use cheaper, like 2 hours a day, home health care before you move them into that. So you want to look at the elimination period before benefits kick in. The other is how long are benefits going to be payable? The statistics say that most people, once they require this care, 3 to 4 years, and then unfortunately, if you're in that situation, you may not longer. You need to figure out for yourself what seems realistic. Some of the policies, which is interesting, I'm actually have one of these policies, is if you're married, you can get the two policies kind of combine. So it could be together, you might have 8 years. But if I need 6 years and my husband needs 2, it can be divided up that way. So, if you have a spouse and that's an option, that's something. And then, the other thing is you choose a benefit amount. And if you choose $180 a day, which doesn't go as far as you think, some of these have automatic cost of living increases. So are you going to get a policy? You just want to make sure that you have a policy that if you pick a daily amount or monthly amount, some people want to make sure that if you took it out relatively young, you don't want to make sure that over the years that a daily amount increases because obviously the cost of care increases. Or you choose amount that you think is doable because you have enough set aside or family can help to cover whatever it may not cover.
That's amazing because knowledge like this is important because someone like a caregiver may think if I go into an assisted living that they still have time. But if you go into an assisted living, you're using every single day towards your plan and it's gonna run out. So you really want to structure yourself accordingly and try to keep that insurance for as long as you can. And we know at some point you will need to go into an assisted living. And perhaps that's something that you can start planning. What happens when the money runs out and now we need to go into an assisted living?
Right.
What are the things that we could work on? What are some misconceptions would you say people have about long-term care insurance from your experience in dealing with this?
I would say one that people have with pretty much every insurance is that they assume they pay these premiums, they have a valid claim, they're going to make the claim, and the insurance company is going to make the process easy and pay the claim. That unfortunately isn't how it usually works. And with long-term care, they do not make it easy at all. Some of the companies require, the insured to use a portal. Well, I'm sorry, my mom could not use a portal. And she's, pretty with it. But I would say very important is to know your policy terms or the policy terms of your loved one, your parent, and make sure that when you see the writing on the wall, as we say, you start getting your ducks in a row. The other thing is people are not clear that there's an elimination period. They didn't understand. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that 30, 60, 90-day time period where you might not get, if you're looking for cognitive care because mom or dad has dementia, then some of the policies require that you have objective evidence. So you might need to, it's not just your mom or dad's neurologist saying, yeah, they have dementia. You may have to do some, have a referral for neuropsych testing so that you can confirm. And then another really important thing is, these insurance companies are not out there to make life easy. So if your doctor records are pretty sparse, that's going to be a problem. So, they're going to cherry pick through these records. And, half the time you walk into the doctors and they're like, she seems well nourished, not in distress, and, oriented times 3, when that's really not the case. It's just kind of how it automatically is. So make sure that the doctor records are very clear, and that your parent or you go with them knows to say, had some falls, or, I'm very unsteady getting up. And it's really hard for people to complain, especially people that are so used to being independent. The misconception is that the insurance company is going to do the right thing, and they're not. It's up to you to make sure that your doctor's on board, your medical records are there, you understand how you're going to get through an elimination period, and that the insurance company is going to not make life easy. They ask for things 20 zillion times, even though you've handed it to them. So I'd like to get things through fax with the fax confirmation, or if I send it through the portal or an email, I'm like, please confirm, or get one of those, I can see, no one will do a read receipt, but I could see that it was delivered. So you just really want to make sure you're ready to go, because they're not going to make life easy.
It's good to have those prior knowledge. In line of that, let's say a family is denied, how do they fight back?
So most of these policies, and I think Alyssa's going to get into that in more detail, but a lot of, you might get denied, right? There's a zillion reasons you denied because you didn't prove your 2A ALS. So one, you should get a denial letter and look at it and see what is their reason. Why are they telling you that your claim is denied? Maybe you just haven't submitted a plan of care. Or maybe your doctor, they're just not convinced that you need help with the 2 ADLs. Maybe you required the objective evidence of dementia and you need to go get neuro testing. And then you don't want to jump into a lawsuit, because obviously that's just going to take over a year. You want to file what we call an appeal. And that, I will say, that is, at that point, it's probably good to at least speak with an attorney or get somebody involved, because the burden is going to be on you to show that the insurance company was wrong. And you're going to have to be the one to put together the medical evidence, that maybe get testimonial statements from a caregiver, a family member, a doctor, to show the insurance company that, look, here is solid proof that, they either have dementia and need substantial supervision because they are a threat to their health and safety, or they need assistance with their 2 activities of daily living because they're a fall risk, or they can't do it, or, whatever it is.
Yes, it definitely helps to get those documents. You talked about them earlier with the doctor, because, sometimes they could be robots. Everybody get the same report. Yes, and having those really, really make a huge difference. Now, I know you've done some work in Congress when it comes to the work that you do. What are some things that you've done in Congress, and how do you see things going for long-term insurances? Is there any things that we should be on the lookout for?
Sure. So with Congress, mostly what we've done is, if you have a group policy, so let's say you were a teacher or you worked for a big company that provided you with long-term care benefits, then your policy falls under, it's a group policy, employer offered policy. It falls under this federal statute called ERISA, Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1972. And these certain rules apply, and the rules are really favorable to the insurance company. So for example, if you get denied, you have to file an appeal within 180 days. If you don't, you lose your opportunity to ever go after your benefits. You can't file a lawsuit. And then when you're filing that appeal, it's called a standard of review. So what is the court? If you file an appeal, the insurance company says, no, we still deny it. Now you have to go, you're right in federal court. The standard of review, not only does the insured have to show that the insurance company was wrong, but they have to show that that wrong decision rose to the level of being arbitrary and capricious. So it's a pretty high standard. It's kind of like if you're doing criminal law, preponderance of the evidence versus, when you do a criminal and you have to show beyond a reasonable doubt. So you kind of move to this beyond a reasonable doubt type of standard. And it's just really slanted towards the insurance company. So we've been working, and it has worked to make changes where insurance company doesn't necessarily get the last word. If the insurance company is having their doctors review it, your doctor has an opportunity to make changes, and just really trying to level the playing field. I'm not sure that's going to happen so much in the next 4 years, but when we have administrations that are open to it, it's been more successful. But with long-term care, most of them are not group policies. Most people take them out individually, so you're more at a state level. And so changes that have been made have been like in Florida, your parent or somebody does let a policy lapse due to dementia, you have the 18 months to show with a doctor that this was a lapse because they just weren't there with it. And then you have the opportunity to catch up on the payments and reestablish the policy. But with long-term care, it's going to be working more with the states. Some of the policies, you have your 5-6 ADLs. One of the main ones is bathing, right? Well, some policies have started to cut out bathing as one of them that counts, which is ridiculous. So there's movement at the state levels to say, okay, you cannot do that. Like that is just, now you're just make them pay for this policy. And now it's impossible to qualify because that's usually the first one to go. So we're just doing things like that, making sure that the playing field is level for the insured and the insurance company.
Wow. I recently met a friend and we were talking, and the conversation ended up being how the law and regulations and certain things people lobby for or companies lobby for doesn't represent everyone. It represents those who show up, have their thoughts, put money into the cause. And I was thinking about that when you were talking about how the whole regulations is towards the insurance. It's for the benefits of the insurance companies. I can see them going lobbying and doing what they need to do. But it's sad to see that our systems work so hard to structure this society that we all seem to take for granted. And then when they need help, and it's for them to get the help. But it's exciting to see people like you going above and beyond, looking for ways to educate and bring value to at least the family members so that they know how to fight back. Which leads me to a lot of my people are caregivers who choose to do it by profession because they have an assisted living or they want to have an assisted living. How do we best prepare them to help our seniors who may need help with their long-term care insurance and their benefits, and also the families? Because we find ourselves in the middle of taking care of the senior and then giving advice to the family members and then pointing them in the right.
So for the facilities, I think one, they want to obviously get a copy of the policy, work with the family member, because like I said, a lot of seniors are reluctant to admit that they need help. So you need to make sure that everybody's on board. And then you want to make sure that the assessment that the facility does very clearly shows the need for substantial assistance. So it shouldn't be a cursory assessment where you're just like level 1 and not really explain why, but have some detailed information about the need for hands-on or standby assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living or cognitive supervision. And then there's forms that have to be filled out, of course, because it's an insurance company. So the documentation and they're not that hard. It's not like you're going to ask somebody who worked at these facilities to spend hours, but you do need to check off the days that you dress the person, assist in dressing, and days that you've, helped them bathing. If there's incidents that occur, those should be documented because you want to show that this person is a fall risk. So if somebody fell and you had to call in, an ambulance or just have additional care, anything like that, you really want it documented. And then as far as, have the assisted living facility or whichever type of facility it is, nursing home, like I said, have someone there not only during have their own nurse assessment, but the insurance company will do one. You want the caregiver there. You want someone to be aware to straighten out that nurse who's there, who's saying, oh, it looks like you can get up, to say, no, Mrs. Smith cannot get up. I've seen her unsteady. So no, she needs some type of assistance, and obviously having a family member there. And then what can be helpful, and we find a lot of these facilities is once it's all established, same as approved, it is really a pain to have the money go to the insured and then have the insured pay the assisted living facility or nursing home or community care center. You can actually get that set up so that the money comes directly to the facility. And that, I think is a really helpful thing to do. And then it's just on the facility to make sure that they continually document the need which kind of seems silly sometimes when you're talking about someone who may be 85, 90, like you're like, how are they going to get better? Like, why do I have to continually prove? But you do. The burden is always on the insured to show that they continue to need help, that they didn't magically at 85, start running marathons, but you have to continue to document and make sure that they go to the doctor and that the whine and complain to the doctor, and it's just always established, because they'll look at 4 records that they say, she's doing so much better. They're like, well, somehow she got better. We don't have to pay anymore.
Wow, I can see them saying that for real because they simply don't want to pay. It's easy to collect the money, but when it's time to pay, it's a pain. I can see that being a problem. But yes, in our facilities, we have 1823 forms that needs to be health assessment forms that needs to be completed. And yes, ALF owners, administrators, please make sure the 1823 form is completed correctly. Not only insurance will not pay you, ACA will come after you because if it's not fully completed, signed by the doctor, it will be a problem. It is not valid. It is behoove of you to make sure it's completed correctly. Any last word for my audience?
They also get the invoices in because they won't pay until they prove that the person. Sure. And yes, I would just say, people who procured these policies took this out to protect themselves. So you need to remember that you don't have to be an invalid. This is for your health and safety. So it's really important that you have your policy, you understand the terms of the policy, and you are aware of what it takes to qualify for benefits. And do not hesitate. Most of the attorneys that handle these type of claims, we're happy to help. We know that they're people need them in times of, and it's difficult times. So reach out for help, but you really need to understand, pull your policy, understand the terms of your policy, and know what you need to do, because you might see the writing on the wall, whether it's now or in a few years, to make sure that your ducks are in a row and you're ready to make that claim, because the insurance company is not going to hold your hand and nicely walk you through it. They are going to, try to make it as difficult as humanly possible.
And, I would imagine there's also loopholes that families may not know about and insurance companies know about. There's always a loophole. And so I want to ask, is there a particular loophole that you know about?
I mean, you're saying like a loophole to maybe avoid payment?
Right.
I mean, it's
right.
a contract.
A loophole to avoid payment.
So the contract is there. I mean, if it's a newish policy, what they might do is look at the form you filled out to get the policy and start paying on it to procure it. And, if it's something you maybe took out in the last 5 years, they might try and look on that application and say, oh, you said you never had a heart problem, but we looked back at your records and we see you walked in, with palpitations one day. Well, that's really not disclosing. That's maybe you had anxiety. I don't know, your kid was in an accident, whatever it was, your husband quitting his job, or so those are types of things. So you just need to not be scared when the insurance company starts challenging you, because most people are honest. Other loophole they try to get around is not objective evidence of maybe cognitive dysfunction. So you don't have, if you don't have it, you can always get it. You can't just say deny you don't have it. I mean, don't be afraid. Say, okay, then I'm going to go get it. Or your neuro doctor can be like, actually, we've done some psych testing. I just didn't formally call it that, but here is the evidence of that. You could get testimonial statements from people if they're starting to deny, saying, we don't believe you. I've had my clients' daughters and sons sign affidavits explaining exactly falls that mom or dad have taken. I would just say there's not loopholes, but they'll try any which way to misrepresent what the terms are, and you want to feel confident that you understand the terms and that you push back. Because I find with these carriers, in most cases, they'll do the right thing pretty quickly, but it takes some pushback.
I love that. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah. So how can they find you? How can they reach out to you? A consultation, a phone call? Because, every case is different. Every scenario is different. And so how can they reach out to you?
So they can call us. I have a toll-free number that is 888-644-2644. You can email me on Mindy at DI Law Group, D like disability, I like insurance, DI Law Group. Or we have a website, dilawgroup.com, and there is a way to contact us right through there. So Anyway, just, or my name, it's pretty unique. You probably see it up there. You can just Google me and I'm going to come right up. You can reach out that way. But, at least with my firm, do not hesitate to call. We know that these are like overwhelming times. It's scary. People need these benefits. And we really don't always love insurance companies. We're really happy to fight them and we're happy to be an advocate. So we're happy to give advice and help people understand what they have and how they can get what they need.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. And you also have education on YouTube. You and your partner does.
We do.
And so if you found any value in this, I recommend that you go to their YouTube channel as well, gain some more knowledge and make that phone call, reach out to them and start the conversation. Thank you so much, Mindy, for being here today. We are very grateful for you. If you found any value in this, I want you to do us a favor. Reach out to Mindy, let her know you watched this episode. What was your big aha moment? Subscribe, like, and share this video with someone that will find value in it. Until next time, thanks for spending this time with me, and I will see you